Good morning, everyone. Good morning.
Good morning, and good morning to everyone who's joined us on YouTube for another Sabbath of where we're going to study Sabbath school lesson number 9. And it is all about Jerusalem controversies. I am Michael Stephenson. With me is Luc Astier. Thank you, Luc.
Hello.
For joining us again. It's been a long time since we had you.
Glad to be back in South Florida. Thank you.
Yes. Good. And our lesson today is going to be Jerusalem controversies, where we're going to look at a few issues that Jesus had to contend with in the last stages of his ministry.
Correct. We're going to Mark 11 and 12. We're going through 2 chapters today.
Two chapters, and yep, that's it. And we're going to look also at a culmination almost of Jesus's ministry during that time. But as we go through this, I'll want to remind you that you can join us during this discussion. You can come to YouTube. You can put your comments or your questions in the chat on YouTube. You can also call us or email us. And if you want to carry around your Sabbath school lesson with you, we have an excellent tool called Advent Tech Sabbath school lesson app. It is beautiful. You keep notes, you synchronize them across devices, all that sort of stuff. It's just the technology of bringing your lesson to with you, right? So here we are with lesson number 9. And so far, we have found Jesus, actually, his ministry has been that he's been saying, don't tell anyone what I've done. Don't tell anyone about this. But many have just gone and just shouted the joy of having been healed. But Jesus was on that. Now we get into a different stage, which you'll describe to us a little later. But we've seen Jesus confronted by the church leaders. He didn't conform to all the church rules and the church manual. And so he's been bombarded on all sides with questions, with traps. In fact, from the very beginning of his ministry, it said that the scribes and Pharisees went off to design a way to kill him.
Yeah, I think Jesus is switching gear. As you said, he was trying to play hidden before because he knew every time there was a clue that he was actually the Son of God, he was coming as a spiritual king. This will generate controversies, and he wanted to extend his life on earth because he knew the controversy will bring him to his death. And so he wanted to extend the time to have more time with his disciple, more time with the people around him. And now I think, for me, this is important. He seems to switch. It seems that he's saying, this is the right time. Now I can accelerate the things, I can reveal, and we will see that things will go much faster. The next 6 chapters will be covering 1 week, while the previous 10 chapters were covering 3.5 years. So we are really zooming in because things are going to happen much faster.
Much faster. And it's interesting that this entire lesson started off with Jesus saying to his mother, my time is not yet come. Or now it's come to a point where his time is come, right? And so let's look at a text that I would like to used to just show the
Yeah,
context of
can I,
this lesson.
can I
And
stop on this notion of time? I think there is two words in Greek. There is chronos, which is the time we usually have in mind, which is the chronology of time, which is hours, days, weeks, months, and years. And there is kairos. The second context of time is actually, it's not about counting the time, it's about the condition for proper opportunity or for proper time. So Jesus, the kairos is
timing as opposed to time.
Exactly. And this is the fullness of time. Now Jesus thinks that this is the right time to move to the next level.
Okay, good stuff. So here we see the text from Mark 12:10-11 says, have you not even read the scripture? The stone which is builders rejected, this became the chief cornerstone. This came about from the Lord, and it is marvelous in our eyes. So Jesus here is telling everyone, basically, this is the person. I am he. Again, but more emphatically in this time, I mean, more clearly, you can't mistake it. There are no riddles in this one. He just tells you as it is, right?
And he says, you're going to reject me, and I will become the cornerstone. So this, I think the lesson today is, for me, all about assertivity. He has to say difficult things to people, but still hoping that he could convert them, and he could get them, not all of them, to resist. As we will see today, most of them will resist, but still he was patient. And I think for me, it is really a good lesson for learning how to be assertive. You need to, when you need some time to give difficult information, tough information to someone directly without affecting their feelings. So we can clearly see Jesus is very patient. I think we'll go through that. He's tested, he's trapped, he's pushed to the limit, and he's always patient. He's always answering. Of course, he's very direct. He doesn't lean, but he's still direct and put them in front of their responsibilities.
Okay. And so now we go into the lesson and some of the controversies. We're looking at in this lesson about 600 controversies that were brought to him. And we go to the first one when he actually is entering Jerusalem. And let me just, if you don't mind, I'll just read this. It is long because we are actually going through this, text by text. So it says, now when they drew near Jerusalem to Bethphage and Bethany, and this is in Mark 11:1-11, at the Mount of Olives, he sent two of his disciples, and he said to them, go into the village opposite you, and as soon as you have entered it, you will find a colt tied up, on which no one has sat. Loose it and bring it. And if anyone says to you, why are you doing this? Say, the Lord has need of it, and immediately he will send it here. So they went their way and found the colt and tied by the door outside on the street, and they loosed it. But some of those who stood there said to them, what are you doing, loosing the colt? And they spoke to them just as Jesus had commanded. So they let them go. Then they brought the colt to Jesus and threw their clothes on it, and he sat on it. And many spread their clothes on the road, and the others cut down leafy branches from trees and spread them on the road. I'll just pause right there. Interesting that Jesus actually knew that there would be a colt, knew what the response would be, and also had that, his disciples followed him and his instructions, and I'm sure they were amazed to find that they got no resistance.
Yeah, and I think it was a clear hint to the disciples. Not only is he very powerful, but he knows the future, and he knows things that are happening that we don't know, which means that everything he's going to say now has to be very carefully analyzed, because most of what he's going to say is about explaining that he's going to die. So
right,
they could see that this very small little prophecy, very practical, happened exactly as he said. So this means that in the next few verses, when we'll see that he's going to talk about the vineyard and everything, if he's right on this prophecy, they could test that. Why would we would not be right on the next ones?
Right. And as we go on further in this text, this has a lot of meaning to it. In fact, historical meaning to it. You know, from verse 9 on, it says, Then those who went before and those who followed cried out, saying, Hosanna, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Blessed is the kingdom of your father David that comes in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest. And Jesus went into Jerusalem and into the temple. So when he had looked around at all things, as the hour was late, he went out to Bethany with the 12.
It's interesting, him coming on a donkey through the of Jerusalem. I keep in mind that he came down the hill, so probably from Jerusalem you could see him going down, and it became viral. It became viral. Everybody would say, "Oh, wow, wow, that's something is happening." Everybody was coming, and
Yes.
I liked it because if you look at big mass, usually they are prepared. If you look at the Olympic game we just went through, and we have the new one for the Paralympics now, it's all prepared. Everybody's gathering because it's all planned. Here, nothing is planned. It's becoming viral. People are coming, and they are just celebrating. And there was one other case that happened in the past, and I think this was a very clear allusion to this, is when David was getting old, there was clear competition between his sons to take over. And who would be the authority that would be actually elected or selected? And there was competition, and everybody, this was the topic of the day, the political topics. And if you go in the US these days, everybody's talking about the next election. Here it was not who's gonna rule after David. David is really old. And so what happened is the prophet actually took on the recommendation of David and God, the prophet took Solomon and put it on David's mule, and he went to the city, and then he went back to Jerusalem. And this is the same thing that happened. Everybody is gathering because it was not planned. Then the noise spread very quickly, and everybody were gathering and were celebrating this entrance of Solomon. So clearly, when we say that Jesus is the son of David, it is dual meanings. It's, of course, it's.
And you think this meaning was not lost on some of the people there. They kind of recognize a similarity with what happened with Solomon, who was chosen by God, but others who wanted someone else.
Exactly. So that's why he's introducing the context. There is competing authorities, and when Jesus will be asked, by which authorities do you say that? And look at where I am. Don't you remember who was the authority that found Solomon? I mean, this is the same story again. Okay, so.
Okay, interesting. So as we go along, then we find Jesus coming up to as they're heading in, walking together, he comes up to a tree. And we see in Mark 11, 12, 14, now the next day when they had come out from Bethany, he was hungry. And seeing from afar a fig tree having leaves, he went to see if perhaps he would find something on it. When he came to it, he found nothing but leaves, for it was not the season for figs. In response, Jesus said to it, Let no one eat fruit from you ever again. And the disciples heard it. That is interesting. And then he went on.
I think we need to remember that, okay, in Mark, we've seen that many times. Many stories are explained in sandwich, which are explaining the story in the middle. So this is the first part of a sandwich story where after the temple cleansing, then we come back, and then the disciples say, "Oh, the fig tree is dead. One day and it's really dead. How come?" And so this is a clear message highlighting that, okay, indeed, when I was young, we had fig trees in my garden, and this is interesting because the fig tree, I was always curious because we had two fig trees. One of them had one season, the other one had two seasons. And
so you had fig trees?
So yeah, and some fig trees have two seasons, but they still lose their leaves in between. And in this case, the fig tree had leaves. So he was kind of showing, I'm ready for the second season, but so that's why it was tricky. Yeah, I'm expecting this tree is showing better than the others. It still get nice leaves.
So it wasn't that Jesus was angry at the tree for he was hungry and he expected to see figs and there was none.
So this was really a key message to say, hey, this tree, if you're showing leaves, it means you're attractive. You need to show fruits, and he's showing that if we are not, if as a church, it's Ellen White is clearly highlighting that the fact that as a church, if we are attractive, it means to bear fruits. If you
Right. If you are taking on the name of Jesus, of God, then you are supposed to bear the fruit of Jesus. And so we can pretend and we can play church all we want. This, and again, Jesus always used these as teaching moments with his disciples. This was always teaching moments. He never did anything arbitrary, right?
correct.
So, and so eventually, when they came back, we follow up in verse 19, where it says that when evening had come, that he went out of the city. Now, in the morning, as they passed by, they saw the fig tree dried up from the roots. And Peter remembered and said to him, Rabbi, look, the fig tree which you curse has withered away. So Jesus answered and said to them, have faith in God. For assuredly I say to you, whoever says to this mountain, be removed and be cast into the sea, and does not doubt in his heart, sorry, but believes that those things he says will be done, he will have whatever he says. Therefore I say to you, whatever things you ask when you pray, believe that you receive them, and you will have them. And whenever you stand praying, if you have anything against anyone, forgive him, that your Father in heaven may also forgive you your trespasses. But if you do not forgive, neither will your Father in heaven forgive your trespasses. Interesting.
Yeah, the fig tree represent the nation of Israel and the religious system at that time, and they were on the verge of losing their authority because they were not bearing fruit. So this gives the context of what's going to happen in the middle of the sandwich, which was the thing. So indeed, the form of religion. I've noted a sentence that we could read in Ellen White. She says that she declares that an open sinner is somehow less guilty than someone who professes faith to serve God, but actually doesn't bear any fruit. So this is really a warning for the nation of Israel and the religious system at that time, but it is also a warning for us. Okay, if I'm claiming the name of Christ, am I really bearing fruit? Am I really someone that's going to bring light to the nations as Israel was expected to be?
Interesting.
It's a warning. It's a loving warning again. So
it is again, and he again uses this time to teach them about humility, forgiveness, and just being what it takes to be a follower of Christ, what it takes to be a godly person, what it takes to be a Christian. Some things even today we actually forget a lot of, and we tend to focus on laws and rules rather than what it is all about. Later, you'll find out as we look at the two real commandments. You'll see that Jesus focuses on the true law, the true spirit of the law. So we then find that as he goes along, he then tells them a parable of the vineyard. Describe that story for me.
Can we stop on the temple cleansing? Because I think in the middle of the sandwich, there was
a temple cleansing, right?
Yeah, this is a very, very important event where Jesus is doing things that he's never done before, and he will never do after. So he goes to the temple and he's throwing the tables, and you could show the text where he's using Old Testament text, highlighting the fact that it was a place.
This is my house of prayer.
It's a house of prayer for the nations, and you transform them into a den of thieves. And he's using text in the Old Testament. But the key thing is, what we need to picture that I like this picture where we see Jesus pushing the tables where they are selling element that could be used for sacrifice. But let's keep in mind, where is he doing that? He's doing this on the Gentile court, because the temple was organized in circles, to go more and more holy.
And there were stages of acceptance to the Gentiles that were in the outer court, correct?
Exactly. So if you look at the temple from outside, you got the court, the Gentile court, where this is where things were sold. Then you've got the Jewish court, I don't know how to call it in English, and then you've got the temple itself, and then you got the holy and the holy of holy.
So and the holy of holies, right?
So you're going in twisted circle, nested circles, and going holier and holier. And what happened is, the most external circle, which was the one where this happened, which was a Gentile court, they were considering as not holy because the Gentile are here. So this is not holy because the Gentile are here. So we can do anything there. We can sell, we can do business. And that's why Jesus is reacting. That's not true, because what you consider the outer circle as being not holy because you have Gentile, you got it wrong. Because it's not Gentile are here. Now I want this place to be as holy as the inside, because Gentile are the goal of your mission.
Yes. And that text, when it says, "My house shall be a house of prayer for all nations," suggests that this is where you're supposed to be evangelizing, not selling stuff at an exorbitant price, mark you.
And not have in mind this is the less holy because you have the Gentiles. You should see the other way around. This is the most important area because this is where you can spread the news to these people. This is an area you can be a witness, right? So
and also there was a kickback that the priests were getting from the high prices being charged. You know, if you hadn't brought your stuff yet, it's like when you come up to an event and you didn't pre-purchase your ticket, the price is higher at the gate. And so they were charging high prices in the temple court, and the priests were getting kickbacks from that. And how that money was used, nobody knows. But and so Jesus here again teaches in what you call negative reinforcement, how the temple is supposed to be used and the purpose of the people.
And I think it's important because this event is very clear at the end of the text in chapter 11, verse 18. It says that they want to kill him now, starting from this, because he's threatening the temple administrative authorities. So he's really shaking the foundation of the organization that was very dangerous for them. So this really triggered. This is really something that he knew it would trigger a chain of reaction that will actually conduct to his.
And of course, he did get a reaction, as we can see in the next text, that the Pharisees came to him, and they came again to Jerusalem, and as he was walking in the temple, the chief priests, the scribes, and the elders came to him, everyone. They all now in a group. Sometimes it would be the Pharisees, sometimes it would be the scribes and Sadducees, now everyone. And they said to him, "By what authority are you doing these things? And who gave you this authority to do these things?" But Jesus answered and said to them, "I also will ask you one question, then answer me, and I will tell you by what authority I do these things." And so he goes on to say, why he was doing it.
Actually, it's interesting because he knows it's a trap, because trap is, if he says it's because my authority comes from God, he will be challenged. And if he says my authority, if my authority comes from man, then of course he will be. So in both cases he would. So what he did is revert the coin, and he says, "I'm going to ask you the question again: is do you consider by what authority John was actually preaching?" And they were trapped themselves, because if they said it's by God, then he would say, "Why don't you believe in him?" And
right.
By men.
They began reasoning amongst themselves, right? It's like if we, he asked them, "What was the baptism of John from heaven or from men?" And he answered. They began reasoning amongst themselves, saying, "If we say from heaven," he would say, "then why did you not believe him? But if we say from men," they were afraid of the people, for everyone considered John to be a prophet. So answering Jesus, they said, "We do not know." And Jesus said to them, "Nor will I tell you by what authority I do."
I don't know if you notice, it's interesting because they say, "We do not know."
Yes.
And the answer is Jesus is not, I do not know either. No, he say, neither will I tell you, which
Right.
means it shows that he knows very well they know. Because
Mm-hmm.
he says neither, it means it's the same thing as them. And so he says, I'm not going to tell you either, but it means that you know that I know. And I know
Mm-hmm.
that you know as well.
It's like, yes, So yeah, let's not go there again. Only the setting up of traps that was involved here, and it had no purpose other than to trap people. Sometimes people do Bible studies in that way, in order to say, okay, the aha moment, we're going to give you proof text of things, and these are all set up as traps or winning texts and stuff like that, rather than considering the other person who you're trying to communicate with, which is, the love and understanding. We sometimes do that, and we look at the Pharisees as all these bad guys, but I keep saying the Pharisees are us if we're not careful.
Yeah, but even though he claims he doesn't answer, the next story answers. I think because he
Yes.
doesn't want to explicitly answer to them because they are trying to trap. But again,
Right.
this is really amazing because Jesus is so patient.
Mm-hmm.
Most of us would be, oh, I'm not going to talk to you anymore. No, but he still brings a story
Mm-hmm.
that answers this question, and not as
Oh,
explicit.
with a parable, correct?
The parable of the vineyard, because who is the owner of the vineyard? What does the owner of the vineyard do? He, the owner of the vineyard, of course, is the authority, and he's sending
Mm-hmm.
the prophet, then he's sending his son. So clearly, who is the son coming from? Which authority is he coming from? Of course, the son is coming
Mm-hmm.
with the authority of the owner of the vineyard to actually correct the vineyard themselves. And it's interesting because um, this story is a very, very clear answer to their question, but
Right.
he doesn't put them on their face. He just explain it so
So,
that
so this is one of those occasions where he actually speaks to them directly, but doesn't necessarily embarrass them as such. They will know based on the parable what he's speaking of, and they will see their place in it.
correct.
Right?
And
And,
it's obvious that they understood why that, because the vineyard is Isaiah 5. The
mhm,
vineyard is the nation of Israel, and it's very
mhm,
clear because God is saying, I've done everything I can for my vineyard. So it's Isaiah 5, which is a text they knew very well, was
right.
really a same allegory, say the vineyard is the nation of
For,
Israel. It
for the
has
vineyard of the Lord of hosts is the house of Israel, and the men of Judah are his pleasant plants. Yes, that's
exactly.
Isaiah. Mhm,
And he grew and he nurtured that vineyard with love, with
mhm,
a lot of patience, and
mhm,
but and the same in Isaiah 5, at some point the vineyard will have to be scrapped. That's why
mhm,
highlighting that the who is the vineyard, the owner of the vineyard,
mhm,
so that it explains why the prophets and
mhm.
who's the authority that the son is coming through. But he's also giving them the hint that he knows that they're gonna kill him. So it's
Right.
amazing. They are
And
so
they're planning that. Yeah.
they are
Mhm,
taking the decision to kill him, but they
mhm.
see that in his own story, he knows he's going to be killed. So it's really interesting.
And yes, and what they're looking for now is kind of evidence to pile up on evidence so that when they come to that point, they will have sufficient proof, as it were. But they're hitting batting zero so far, except for the one of blasphemy. That's about it that they have so far. Everything else has been coming up zero. And so they come back at him even after this. I mean, so far they haven't achieved anything, and they come back with him with another content, another challenge, and we see that in verses 13 to 27, Mark 12, verse 13 to 27. Let
Can
me.
I still
Mhm.
say one more thing concerning the vineyard? For me, that's the striking information is that if you read the story as it is, who can believe that by killing the son, they will inherit the vineyard? I mean,
Yeah.
if you go and kill a man and think you're going to inherit, it doesn't work, right? In a nation of
In
law.
some places it works. This is the thing. In some places, if there's an absentee landlord and he can't make it himself over time, even the law sometimes gives squatters rights. In some cases, it does work.
But I think if they knew that if God is overlooking that, they know
But
it's
not
not
God.
the way
Yes.
God works. So it should be clear to their mind that
Mhm.
by killing the son, you're not going to take ownership of the vineyard. By killing the son, you're just putting an end to your mission. That's all you're going to
That
do.
is that is correct, and especially as it relates to God. And so they come at him again. You know, they're not relenting. It says, then they sent to him some of the Pharisees and the Herodians to catch him in his words. That's the reason. When
Yeah.
they had come, they had said to him, Teacher, we know that you're true and care about no one, for you do not regard the person of men, but teach the way of God in truth. Is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar or not? Shall we pay or shall we not pay? But he, knowing their hypocrisy, said to them, Why do you test? Bring me a denarius that I may see it. So they brought it, and they said to them, Whose image and inscription is this? They said to him, Caesar's, they said. And Jesus answered and said to them, Render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. And they marveled at him. Then some Sadducees who say there is no resurrection came to him and asked him, saying, and this will go into another text, but let's deal with this one with Caesar and with them coming to trap him with this one.
Yeah,
Right?
I like verse 13 because we can see that it is the religious leaders that are mandating, that are delegating the mission to trap Jesus. In this example, it is to the Herodians and the Pharisees, and the next one will be with the Sadducees. So the specialists were in mission. They were delegated the mission to try to trap Jesus on his own words. And interesting enough, the Pharisees and the Herodians, they took a very contemporary challenge. Is the political context was very difficult, because indeed, do you collaborate with the enemy which is ruling your country, or you're defending what your country is, having in mind that its spiritual mission was also a political one, which was wrong. So he was in between. And it's interesting because this challenge was a challenge, an everyday challenge for the Pharisees. And they were kind of playing in between, because they were still using the coin, even though it has a Caesar's face on it.
And they had to. There were like a mini rulership within a rulership of the Romans. And so they had to conform to the rules. But they wanted to trap Jesus. If they can't get him, they may get the Romans to get him, because if he ever said, the oppressive Romans, no, they are not the one that we should be giving anything to, he would be in trouble with the law. And if he said anything otherwise, he'd be again in trouble with the people and the Pharisees and everything else. And he had the wisdom, which is from God, to say, give unto Caesar what is Caesar's and give unto God what is God's. Something we should internalize as well and think about in terms of not getting too connected and caught up in politics, that we can separate ourselves from it and understand the civic duties that we may have and the duties that we have to God, which one is supreme over the other at all times,
Yeah, but I think it's very interesting, because indeed he's highlighting the fact that the authority of God is not from an earthly politic perspective. You can still obey both. In their mind, it was conflicting, because they believed the nation of Israel had a mission to be an independent political unit, and which is not what Jesus came for.
That's all they had in their mind, though. It was just a political rulership. That's the only thing that they knew. That's the only thing that they were, ever since Saul was made a king, the rulership of God over a nation was no more in their sights. That's why they lost the way so many times. They were still thinking in terms of God promising them a political, what should they say, supremacy.
But
And this wasn't gelling with the view that they got from the Bible. Again, 400 years of no prophets. They had a whole lot of time to make up a whole lot of reasonings for a whole lot of things, including 613 laws that God didn't make, right?
correct. And
So
but you see that the management of money was already a challenge at that time, and we could see two stories similar in the New Testament where Jesus saying, "You're claiming you don't owe money to your parents because you pay to
yes,
the church."
yes, you
And
have promised it to the church. My will is going to the church, therefore I can't use it for you.
exactly. So he is highlighting that no duties is overlapping the others, right? So so typically for me, this was one of the questions. Sometimes we have people asking, okay, when you're paying your tithe, are you paying your tithe before the tax or after the tax, right? And well, some people say, yeah, I'm paying the duty after tax, but actually in this case, no, because the tax I'm paying is before the tithes, and the same, the tithes I pay should be before the tax. So these are
It's
two independent deliveries, right?
Yeah, and sometimes you find out that is a non-issue, really. In fact, we've been given some instructions as regard some minimums. So we should be thinking about how much more I
Exactly.
could be actually paying rather than the minimum 10%.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
and then we find that they now having got such a response that they were amazed at, or it was so good. They came back to him with something a lame one. They came back to him with this one with about the seven husbands of this one woman. Describe
Yeah.
that story.
I like the fact that so the leaders are appointing the Pharisees, and clearly Jesus was stronger than them. They couldn't trap him, so they were using political. And then they say, "Okay, Sadducees, that's your turn. Show what you can."
Mm,
And what the Sadducees is doing, they are trying to use religious doctrinal logic to actually claim that Jesus could not stand with
right.
the resurrection theology, because they believe they didn't believe in resurrections. And
Yeah.
what's really sad about this story is they're explaining a story where a woman is married with a husband, and before she got children, when the man dies, she's entitled to marry the brother of this man, because they want to carry the name, but also because the woman had no financial means to live, so someone had to take care of her. And
Right.
this scenario, they're using the case of a woman that has gone through seven different brothers. That his
Yeah,
wife.
six brothers. The seventh one now actually refused because, for obvious reasons, this looks like a widowmaker.
But, can we think about this? Can we explain in such a context? We use this into a doctrinal context without having a heart? Can you imagine this woman having six husbands dying? This is the first thing when you explain this story. You should have your eyes in tear. No, it's just a story to actually trap Jesus. And then the second thing, the great news is all the brothers are in heaven, and the woman is also in heaven. Hallelujah. None of this.
Yes.
They should be
Why is
sad
there?
and happy. No,
Yeah.
it's not this. This is just a scenario to trip you. That's it.
And it is an improbable scenario at that. It just, what are the chances of that happening? But it is again for another doctrinal twist to sort of trip someone up. And that is not a proper use of the scripture. Not at all. And again, we tend to sometimes do that to get our own way, is to trip people up with scripture. That is a goal for some people, when in reality, we are supposed to be evangelizing, educating, um, given more, imparting more wisdom as is been imparted to us. And in fact, most of the time, we're supposed to be living the Bible, not beating people over the head with it.
I remember once I went to ask a question to my pastor, and he told me, "You're asking yourself the wrong question." And I was thinking to myself, can they be a wrong question? And yes, in this case, I think it's a wrong question. And we will see, especially with the last story, we'll see after that, you have a very cornerstone question that is intended to trap Jesus with no heart. And the reality is, can I trust God? If God is making my way into salvation, I know He sorted out this situation with this wife with 7 husbands. I don't know how it will be solved out, but I'm sure He will. If He's able to resurrect me and give me an eternal life, I'm sure He will be able to sort it out. This is not
exactly everything that God needs to do, and He's perfect in His plans. He didn't say, "Oops, I didn't see that coming." He has a plan for that. And even if we don't know, we can be assured that God will take care of all of that.
Correct. And
in a way that we would find amazingly excellent. This is God's MO. He is excellent at whatever He does and whatever solutions He's designed for us. In fact, we could never have guessed about the virgin birth of Jesus as a solution to our death problem. We could never have thought of it. We could have never designed it. In hindsight, we call it a mystery, because even with all the information we have, we still find it to be an amazing solution. So let's look at what one of the scribes, who may be seeking truth, said to Jesus.
Yeah, so to finish the previous story, if you and your wife, or if you and your husband are saved, you will be glad. You will be happy. I don't know how the connection will be there.
You'll be happy you made it. Like,
and,
yeah. Ooh, I'm here. Yeah, I'm good. You know, it's like,
so I am so happy and I'm so joyful. I will see my wife in over there, and I don't know what will be our relationship, but I trust the Lord. He will do what's best for both of us. So,
for everyone. And so we go into what one of the scribes came to Jesus with about the greatest commandment. And one of the scribes came, having heard them reasoning together, and this is from Mark 12:28, perceiving that He had answered them well, and asked, "Which is the first commandment of all?" Jesus answered him, "The first of all the commandments is, Hear, O Israel, the Lord, or God, the Lord is one. And you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. This is the first commandment. And the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. There is no other commandment greater than these." So the scribe said to him, "Well said, teacher. You have spoken the truth, for there is one God, and there is no other but He. And to love Him with all the heart, with all the understanding, with all the soul, and with all the strength, and to love one's neighbor as oneself is more than all the whole burnt offerings and sacrifices." Now, when Jesus saw that he answered wisely, He said to him, "You are not far from the kingdom of God." But after that, no one dared ask him a question.
Yeah,
so that's different, isn't it, for a scribe?
It's interesting because this scribe was honest, and as opposed to the previous story, he was focused on the most important one. He was not focused on a very hypothetical scenarios to find out. No, he was, what is the most important of the commandment? This is the very foundation of our belief. And interestingly enough, in the mindset of people, since they had so many rules to follow, by putting a priority, you could say, okay, these ones I can put on the back burner, right? So somewhere lower. But if you look carefully with what the way Jesus answered using 2 Old Testament texts, with
that was in Deuteronomy, correct? And in right, in Leviticus and in Deuteronomy. Interesting.
Exactly, in Deuteronomy 6, and the other one I forgot. I think it's in Leviticus.
It's up here. Hear, O Israel, the Lord, or God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. And then Leviticus says, "You shall not take vengeance nor bear any grudge against the children of your people, but you shall love your neighbor as yourself. I am the Lord."
Yeah. So he's reusing those. And interestingly enough, with those two, you cannot disregard as low importance any of the 10 commandments of the moral law, because
Right.
by disregarding any of those 10, you're actually disregarding these two. That's why
Right.
this answer shows that the 10 commandment can be, there's none to be discarded. However, the tradition law and the traditional law came by the scribe, but also what we call the Moses law, about the sacrifice, everything goes second, because you can not do those and still love your neighbor and love your God. So, and I think so that's why when the man said, "Oh, everything about the temple comes second," and
Mm-hmm.
Jesus say, "Yeah, you're close, you're close." We need to keep in mind that the nation of Israel, the way they were thinking is that they had, if the whole nation could observe all the commandment perfectly as a nation, each
Mm-hmm.
individual, then the Messiah would come. This was the mindset. So if one Sabbath, they could, from early morning to sundown, every single person could observe the law, then the Messiah would come. And
Wow.
so,
And, 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 and that is, already it's been told you can't actually do that. You can't keep all the law, and that's kind of impossible for us.
but so that's the mindset of this person, and that's why Jesus is telling him, you're close to the King of God. Because why are you close? Because it's not about following all these commandments during the whole day as a nation. You are close because I am here. I am he said, I am the kingdom of God. So you're next to it, next to me. So you are very close. You
I don't
just,
think he got that though. Do you think? I don't think he got that. He probably thought I am close to being perfect. But in reality, Jesus is saying you're actually standing right next to the kingdom of God.
yeah, but I think probably over time he could actually see that
A
Jesus
seed
is
was sown.
God.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. A
And
seed
that's why,
was sown. And this is one scribe that actually had it seemed in his approach was for truth, not to catch Jesus in anything. He was genuine and honest in what he wanted. And we did see in many occasions where the leaders would come to him some by night because they believed him. There were others that went along with the others because of peer pressure. But in reality, there were many that actually believed Jesus. Not the most, but there were some that believed Jesus.
so, but I think that's why for me this scribe was very useful for Jesus, because he's been patient for all
Mm-hmm.
these traps, and he's
Mm-hmm.
answering properly. And sometimes, if I, as a human, I would say, "Oh, stop
Mm-hmm.
trapping me. There's no value." No. Jesus knew that they could still be benefit, and at the end, he
Right.
still get a breath of fresh air, which is,
Right.
oh, we still have honest hearts in this assembly among the rulers also. So that's why I should not
And
reject them, despite most of them
right.
trying to trick me.
Right, exactly. So he didn't have a blanket approach to scribes and Pharisees. He took people individually as they came. If they came as a team to trap him, then he would deal with them as a team. But, he dealt with people individually, no matter where they came from. And that's why he was accused of just hanging out with wine bibbers and, unseemly people, because he had the heart for people, something that we have to cultivate. And only by actually being with Jesus on a daily basis can we cultivate a genuine heart with Jesus, not just playing church.
Correct. Correct.
And so, as we come to the end of our lesson, thank you, Luke, for just explaining all of this for us and keeping it in context. And, Ellen G. White says no one can live the law of God without ministering to others. But there are many who do not live out Christ's merciful, unselfish life. Some who think themselves excellent Christians do not understand what constitutes service for God. And this again, Jesus comes with warnings and he also comes with solutions. And he says, I am the way. Thank you again. And please, everyone that has joined us today, please join us again in, for a Bible study next Sabbath. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mm.